Okay, I think we'll get started. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. We are the Stanford Bitcoin Club. We're a student organization on campus. We do, everything blockchain, crypto economics. Started 4 years ago. Back then we were very small, but now, we're having an event every week. We also have, a lot of educational initiatives like reading groups on campus. So things are really exciting. If you're a newcomer, welcome, and please check out our website, blockchain.stanford.edu. You can sign up for our mailing list and Facebook page. Pretty much all our events are open to the public, so yeah, thanks again for coming. And after today's event, if people are interested, I think people have been asking if we can have like a little meetup get together afterwards. So if anyone is interested, we'll probably head over to the Treehouse, which is a sort of casual restaurant on campus, and we can hang out there. Yeah, but today we're really excited to be having Tim Draper here with us. He's not just a legend in the investing world, but also in the Bitcoin world. Just gonna skip reading the introduction because there's no need for that. But yeah, very lucky to have him here. So thanks. I think the format for today will be maybe Tim will talk for 20 minutes or so, and then we'll have Q&A for 30 minutes, and yeah, that'll be it. So please welcome Tim.
All right. Great, thank you, Charles, and thanks for setting all this up. Great to see all you. And so the Blockchain Club is alive and kicking here at Stanford. Or how many of you are actual Blockchain Club members? And how many just heard about it? The members? Hands up? Good. Great. And then how many think that they're in an ancient Greek class? Okay, good, yeah. There are my targets for entrepreneurship. Well, great. So the reason I wanted to come here was that, I've been in the venture business for a long time. I've seen a lot of interesting things happen. I've had an opportunity to invest in some companies and some technologies that have been somewhat transformative. And it was a lot of trial and error. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I made some stupid investments. I made some lucky investments. And then now I can kind of look back and say, well, what worked? And then how is that going to change things in the future? So here's what worked. And these are the things that will help me and maybe help you look at how to approach a venture capitalist, or at least to approach me, if you have a new idea for a business. Well, I have found that future entrepreneur right there. So I have found that the big winners were the ones that came after an industry that was currently controlled by oligopolies or monopolists who were charging a high price for a bad service. So you can, give me a few examples of who's charging a high price for a bad service. Stanford. No, I was here too, it was great. Your cable guy, somebody said cable, right? The banks, who else?
Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam, okay, you go to the head of the class. Oh, you're there, okay. So I look for industries that are big, fat, and bloated. And they have been living high off the hog for a long time, and they've been charging a high cost for a bad service. And so this happened when the internet came along. It disintermediated a whole bunch of those industries. It changed communications and information and gaming, and those were run by, before that they were run by, in effect, oligopolies and monopolies. They were, the music industry was just those, Universal and Sony and whoever else, and they controlled all music. They were the big funnel for all music, and then Napster came along and it was like, whoa! All of a sudden everyone could participate, anybody could be a part of it, anybody could put their music up there, and anybody could get that music for free. And so then they responded by first they went out and first they panicked, and then they went and sued all the 12-year-old girls who were sharing music, and then they went through lawsuits and everything else, and finally they settled and they worked out a deal with Steve Jobs for iTunes, and then they sort of got into it, and the music industry is sort of back on its feet again. But they're having to compete. They're really in the marketplace now. They used to be able to do whatever they wanted, and it didn't matter because it all went through them. Communications changed. Long-distance carriers used to charge huge amounts for bad service, and then all of a sudden Skype came along, and Skype made it so that was just free. So they took a service that was crazy expensive and they made it free. And so suddenly the long distance carriers attacked, but they went after voice over IP, and they didn't really understand what they were doing because they were a monopoly and they were lazy. And whereas Skype was using a peer-to-peer technology, and so they went and attacked voice over IP, and so Vonage got hit, but Skype was wide open and was able to become the biggest long distance carrier in the world. The car industry. Fat and happy, everybody's living really high on the hog. They're all, charging a high price for a bad car, and it's a gas guzzler. And then Tesla comes along, and Tesla just goes and they come in and they go, hey, we got an all-electric car. It's faster than anything else out there, and it's light, and it's safe, and it's awesome. And so the car companies panicked, and they didn't know exactly what to do, and what most of these big oligopolies do is they first panic, then they attack, and then they go for the press and they try to manipulate the press, and then they create the lawsuits, and then they complain to the government, and then if they go through that whole process and they are ineffective, then that company is going to be there for a long time to come. So in Tesla's case, Elon puts out this amazing car companies are panicking. Somehow they manipulated some New York Times writer to say, hey, these things don't work in the winter. And so the New York Times writer writes this article that said, hey, I ran out of juice, and it was all because it was cold weather, and so the thing ran out of juice. Well, Elon, they didn't know, but the writer didn't know, but Elon actually has a tracer on every one of his cars, and he knows exactly where those cars go. So he traced that writer's car, and it turns out that writer rode around in the parking lot for 3 hours so that he'd run out of battery, so that he would be stranded on the street so he could write his article. And then he published that in the paper. And then that was like step one, and then every time the car companies would rise up and they'd say, hey, one of these electric cars blew up, Elon would say, yes, but it's the safest car on the road. And each time he'd use that as a vehicle to promote his own business. And it was a brilliant strategy, and so the car companies failed to crush him, put him out of business. As entrepreneurs, you potentially will be crushed and put out of business if you're not really aggressive. You have to be really aggressive. You have to really go after it. Elizabeth Holmes had a little trouble because she created something that was going to affect not just like the car companies, it was the drug companies, the AMA, all the doctors, the insurance, healthcare, blah, 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 blah. There were a lot of, the FDA, there were a lot of powerful people that she was going after with her just little 2 drops of blood tests. And they went after her in every way possible, and the competitors were feeding the press, and the press was coming up with these attacks, and then the attacks got so big and people started to uprise, so then the government got involved, and then the lawsuits, and it just stirred up a lot of trouble. she had not gotten to the point where the customers were so delighted with her service that they would rise up in her favor. And so she really did get really smashed down by this. So what I'm always doing is I'm looking for those few entrepreneurs that can go after one of these industries that is fat and happy. And I know that if our entrepreneur is hugely successful, that they will ultimately be attacked by their competition in one of these ways. And there are very clear ways for you to dodge and weave in order to win those businesses. So the internet has changed all these industries. Well, so when you get a new technology and it comes through in a wave, and all these industries get affected. And so there were that first wave from the internet, but then the internet also started to get your location data, and so suddenly they transformed the way we transport ourselves with Uber, and they changed the hotel business with Airbnb, and many other businesses that are tied to your place where you live, or where you are at any one time, because everybody knows where you are if you're holding one of these. So there are, so those technologies, Internet 1.0 and 2.0, they changed a whole bunch of industries, and these were big industries, pretty big industries, hundreds of billions of dollar industries. But now, there is Bitcoin and the blockchain, and that's why you're all here. Bitcoin and the blockchain are capable now of transforming industries that are in the trillions of dollars, the heavily regulated industries, the electricity industry, all banking, investment banking, insurance, I don't know about cable, but government, and also the venture capital business. In fact, it's already affected the venture capital business. There was, Q3 of last year, there was more ICO money raised than there was venture capital money raised. So our business completely has been, whatever that is, demoralized. And by becoming demoralized and disrupted, we venture capitalists have had to reinvent ourselves. So venture capital was one of those industries that was providing bad service at a high cost. And we now have to go figure out what to do. And that's part of the fun of being a venture capitalist, is that you get to sort of be on top of these things, and if you see a big wave coming by like this, you can jump on it. So something I'm kind of experimenting with is I get to go around the world. I have a network of venture capitalists around the world that are all sort of this Draper Venture Network, sort of a loose thing, but they have allowed me to travel everywhere. And I get to meet with the prime minister of this country or the president of that country, and they are all saying, how do we get you to our country? How do we get entrepreneurs into our country? How do we get money into our country? How do we create this ecosystem that you seem to have created into our country? How do we get constituents into our country? How do we get people to be citizens of our country? So I started to think about that, and I put it into my head, and it was a little weird, because here in the US it's like, have you filled out form 32C1X? Oh no, you didn't fill out part 3 correctly. You know, it's supposed to be a 1 before the 10. And so for some reason our country is sort of pushing all that innovation out by heavily regulating it. But there are a lot of countries who are saying, yeah, bring it here. So here's what I've seen. Okay, let me kind of quickly go through Bitcoin and the blockchain, but I think this audience probably doesn't need to hear it. Bitcoin is a decentralized currency. It is free, it goes cross borders, it's frictionless, it's open to the globe, anyone in the globe. You can take it from one country to another and it's still worth 1 Bitcoin. You can move it very quickly to your family in the Philippines or whoever. You can move this money very quickly and it's very powerful. And then the blockchain is this perfect ledger, and it keeps perfect track of where all those Bitcoin go. And people have said to me, oh, well, you know, but Bitcoin is where all those criminals are. Well, it turns out it's where all those criminals were. They started out by saying, you know, here, we're going to use this because it's anonymous and all that stuff. Well, now if you do something as a criminal on Bitcoin, with Bitcoin, you can actually receive the Bitcoin in your crime. But then the moment you try to move your block of Bitcoin, you're busted. And so if you want to be a criminal, stay with fiat. You know, use your cash. It's much safer. Don't play too much with the crypto world because they always catch you. Because the blockchain is a perfect ledger. So with a perfect ledger, okay, then there's the smart contract, which means that with the blockchain, you can create a contract. So if you and I, Destiny and I, have a deal, we make a bet on the outcome of the Warriors game. And I say the Warriors are going to lose, and you say the Warriors are going to win, and they win. And we've each put a Bitcoin into this bet. A smart contract just sends it to you, and nothing. There's no lawyer involved. There's no accountant involved. It's just done. So if you take this a little further, you can say, well, if everybody used Bitcoin, we would not require a single accountant, because all of the accounting will be done on the blockchain and checked by all the miners on the blockchain. So suddenly you don't need the accountants and you don't need the lawyers. Okay, that's great for productivity. So now, what about government? Well, okay, let's take it a little further. If you've got perfect data, which sits there on this blockchain, and you have the ability to send money and move money, and you can move it on a smart contract, that pretty much obviates the need for all the virtual part of governance. Okay, there's still the terrestrial part, the police, the fire, whatever. But then there's the virtual part that's sort of your safety net. It's your welfare and your pension, Social Security. It's your health care services, your health care insurance. All of those things can easily be done virtually, and there's no reason for any of them to be tied to some landmass with borders around them. You can actually do that kind of a thing virtually. You can pass it across borders. So let's put a couple of these things together. You've got governments that are saying, how do we get you to our country? You have a new technology that allows you to do all this virtual part of governance, in effect, for free, because it's super cheap. And it eliminates the need for all that bureaucracy. And the blockchain is fair and incorruptible and honest and straightforward, and everybody is treated exactly the same on the blockchain. So it's the perfect bureaucrat. So government, which now, by the way, takes more than half of the GDP of at least this country and probably of the world, government, probably only needs to take about 10%. All that rest of that governance can be virtual. And then I always feel like, you know, if one company makes a chair and another company makes a chair and another company makes a chair, they all have to compete for me. Okay, now, all those, for virtual government services, all of those countries now have to compete for me. They all have to compete for you. They have to create new forms of government. And I think they will separate the virtual piece from the terrestrial piece. And they will say, hey, we provide better healthcare insurance than any other country, and so use ours. It'll be like, you know, signing up for your internet service or for your cell phone or whatever. Let's, you know, do a friends and family thing, do a something. They'll have to compete for you. And the thing that put this into my head for the first time was that the Estonian Prime Minister came to Draper University and he said, just by instituting digital signatures, we save 2% of our GDP. And then we use digital voting and all the young people started to vote. Then we used digital identity and the crime rate went down and the business climate improved. And then he said, and now we've got a virtual residency program, and he made me the 3rd virtual resident of Estonia. So now there are something like 10,000 virtual residents of Estonia. And I think, and the service he's provided is simple. It's just, I can, now with this card, I can open a bank account in the EU, or I can buy real estate in the EU. But he didn't take it far enough, because he could have provided me better healthcare insurance than I get with my government. He could have provided me a better safety net than I have with my government. He could have provided me a better pension than I get with Social Security. He could have done all those things, and then I'd start saying, well, wait, well, why are we paying all this money for our government when these guys can do it for half the cost, or a third or a tenth of the cost, and provide us better service? So I got started to think I could do my healthcare insurance from Canada, and my pension in Chile, and my Social Security safety net in Zimbabwe, and maybe even my virtual education is done in Russia, or any number of different services that are currently provided by people can now be provided in this new world. So now I'm going to, before I go back to governance, I'm going to go into healthcare. So think about this. The blockchain keeps perfect records. They're all right on the, you know, everything perfect records, right? Okay, change your mind, if you will, to when you control your healthcare records, okay? Instead of having various doctors have them in different files and on Post-it notes and whatever else, you actually control it. You know exactly what's happened to you over the years. You've got all that data. And then you go, well, that's interesting, I got my healthcare records, but how about adding my Fitbit results? How about adding what I ate for dinner last night? How about adding all the times I had too much exercise? How about adding, you know, my genealogy? Why not put all that stuff in? Then I've still got all this data, and then I can give it out to doctors or whatever. And then you can take AI, take big data and deep learning, it's kind of AI, and you can throw all my data up there into the cloud, all your data, everybody's data up into the cloud, and now all these things start happening. People recognize, all of a sudden they say, oh my gosh, you know, if you drink too much orange juice, you're more likely to have a heart attack. If you do they're gonna, and then they'll say, oh no, that's not for you because you're not a part of this genetic tribe. You are, and so this is more appropriate for you. Okay, this is gonna change everything. First of all, doctors won't have to spend 12 years memorizing stuff. They can just be consultants to the AI in the cloud, and they can take that stuff down and apply it to you, exactly what you've got, and your genetic history, your disease, and your whatever. So this changes healthcare in a big way. And okay, so now you've got this big opportunity. You can use the blockchain for healthcare. Who's your big threat? Who's going to come after you? The drug companies. Drug companies right now, they go, I got a pill and it passed. It went through FDA approval. I spent $1 billion in 15 years. I got a pill. I feel I can sell that pill to all of you. But all of a sudden, now, in the cloud, there's information that says, sure, it's great for some of you, but for some it gives you suicidal thoughts, whatever else they say in TV. Suicidal thoughts, bad for you in pregnancy, grow a third toe, green hair, whatever it is. It all comes to you because, and then they figure out that they can't sell to that whole huge population, and then they start to panic because then they start losing business. It's a little bit like when I heard from the head of JP Morgan, and he goes, anybody in my company who buys Bitcoin is fired. Because what he saw was the same thing that drug companies are going to see. He saw a couple of his clients taking some of their money and putting it into crypto. And even if it's like 1%, that's a huge thing for him. And then it's like 1, and then it's 2, and then it's 5, and then pretty soon people are kind of like, hey, I got plenty of money, it's right here on the ledger, or it's in my Coinbase account, or wherever. And suddenly they don't need you, Mr. JP Morgan. You ever notice if you walk down the street, all these big, huge buildings with Citibank, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo on them? Who's paying for all that? You guys! Anybody with a bank account. So it's a little like my son and I went to Las Vegas, and he said, I'm going to make so much money gambling. And I said, you see all those big buildings out there? That's from people just like you who said they were going to make a whole bunch of money here in Las Vegas. It is that. And now that same son and I walk down the street and they go, that bank's going to be for sale, that real estate with that bank is going to be for sale, that real estate's going to be for sale, that real estate's going to be for sale, because they are going to go out of business. So people say, well, Draper, you're way too optimistic, you're crazy. And it's been true all the way along. Although I was right on $10,000 per Bitcoin. So now I made this new prediction of $250,000 per Bitcoin by 2022. People are going, what? It just came down. How could it possibly? and I say, well, okay, think about what's out there. You got a bunch of fiat currency, right? $86 trillion of fiat currency. It's going to be 86th. It's going to basically, who wants to hold on to a currency that is tied to a geographic plot of land where it's completely subject to the whims of some political leader or a political party or whoever, and they'll print it whenever they want, and your money will decrease whenever they feel like it, and have that as one alternative. The other alternative is also it gets hacked over and over and over. These banks are playing whack-a-mole, trying to keep the hackers away from fiat currency. Okay, so then you've got Bitcoin. Never been hacked, knock on wood. Never been hacked. And it's getting harder and harder to hack because there are more and more miners and more wallets, and it's more people checking on it. It's decentralized, so it's not tied to any one government and not any one company, not any one anything. It is global, so you can drop it off here and pick it up over there. You can cross-border. I backed a guy who came to me is Sebastian Serrano, and he came to me and he said, Bitcoin is really great. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, I have watched my family's fortune disappear 3 times in my life already, and I'm only 30 years old. And he said, I live in Argentina, and they have had 3 financial crises, and with each crisis, we lost our entire fortune. Now, of course, if you're in Nigeria, you say, well, yeah, only 3? But in other countries, they're kind of going, wow, that's a lot. I mean, we've had inflation, nothing like that. And so he said, I'm going to create this Bitcoin company for Argentina because the country really needs it. And And so he's done that, and now he's got one of the top 30 crypto products out there. And he just got very excited because he knew that Bitcoin was not subject to those political whims. So now people are going to move. They're going to move to crypto. They're going to move. Bitcoin is going to be the most stable of them, but there are going to be a lot of cryptocurrencies that people are going to be able to use and do really interesting things with. Now I'm going to get into how governments are competing. This is kind of fun. So, okay, the Chinese. Oh, here's my theory after all this. If you have freedom, you get prosperity and wealth. If you have heavy regulation and government control, you go not only to poverty but almost to slavery, because you are stuck in that country and you can't do anything about it. So we had the greatest thing happen in China when Deng Xiaoping said, some of us will get rich first. And in came all the free markets and everybody traded, and China grew and it became a fabulous, wealthy, exciting, successful, entrepreneurial country. And now we got this president in there, China, who says, we're stopping all the currency movement. Bitcoin's illegal. The ICOs are illegal. They have to go through me. Everything has to go through me. And somehow there's one of him and there are like 1.5 billion of them, and they still can't overthrow this guy. But let's assume, anyway, so instead, what they're doing is they're leaving. They're leaving China. They're going, where? Anywhere else. Get me out of here. I am a crypto entrepreneur and I'm going to make great things happen. I can't be in this country. So then what does Japan do? Bitcoin is a national currency in Japan. Boom! That is where all the Chinese entrepreneurs, it's like, come on in. So suddenly you have this real flux of entrepreneurship, of people who are really going to change the face of the planet, and they're going to the country that is the most welcoming to them. Korea was following Chinese lead, and they said, oh yeah, Bitcoin's illegal and ICOs are illegal, and who knows why they were doing it, some Chinese pressure or whatever. And then they got 250,000 letters, and they came to the conclusion that 40% of the Koreans have a Bitcoin wallet. And they're going, what? How can you do this to us? And all of a sudden, Korea's government went, oh, just kidding. We're good. Perfectly legal, everything's fine. The US has been running kind of weird. Here's my theory on the US. It's really interesting. You've got all of these millennials, many of you, all these millennials coming up, and they're going, okay, I can't get a job because I was poorly educated and I spent $200,000 and I'm deeply in debt, okay? They come out and they go, okay, $200,000 in debt, I can't seem to get a job, but I really know my ancient Greek. What do I do? So all of a sudden they're sitting there, well, that's that fiat world, and it's like my grandfather's Pontiac or whatever. And then they go, all of a sudden there's Bitcoin. All of a sudden there are all these crypto things that come out. They go, that's my economy. That's the one for me. So then the US is kind of going, oh boy, we got a problem. We got all these amazing technologies that we don't want to lose, but we want to regulate everybody. You know, we want everybody to act the way we wanted them to act. U.S. has gotten to be a heavy regulating country. It's like you got to, if you speak in front of an audience, you have to have one hand tied behind your back, and then eventually, if you say something wrong, it's two hands, and then you're eating like this, and then they cut off your tongue and they cut off your legs, and you cannot feed yourself or your family. That's what regulations do. So anytime you hear somebody say there ought to be a law, just cut them off. If they say, let's be reasonable, you ever heard that? Hey, let's be realistic, that's a killer. That's basically saying, if I say let's be realistic, I'm saying, I want the status quo. I don't want anything to change, I'm scared. That's what those people are doing. They are scared of change. You are not scared of change. You will go enforce change and drive change. So anyway, okay, so these countries are all doing this. Oh, another part, the ICO. Okay, the only legal way to do an ICO back 2 or 3 years ago was to do it through Switzerland with this weird thing where it's a non-profit and a for-profit, and one had to be run by one country, one group of people, and one had to be run by another group of people. And of course, all the money went to the non-profit, and the for-profit had to get the money, and the non-profit freezes the money, and then they get into a war, and suddenly it's not working. The system is not working. Well, then Switzerland says, oh God, it's not working, we got to regulate. So they go and they regulate, and then all the ICO entrepreneurs go, well, screw this, I'm going to Singapore. So Singapore says, oh, come on, bring them in. And so then everybody's doing ICOs in Singapore. And then Singapore goes, oh, well, we really need to regulate. So then people go, oh, screw this, I'm going to Gibraltar. And so then they all started to make their ICOs in Gibraltar. And then the Gibraltar guys, then it's like Malta is better than Gibraltar. And then Cayman is better than Malta. So you start seeing real competitive governance happening out there. People are smart. They go to the places where, hey, where am I the freest? Because if I'm the freest, I know I can feed my family. I got both of my arms and both of my legs and my time, and I can feed my family. But if I'm regulated, it's like, and I can't feed my family. So people will go to the best place. So these geographic borders, I mean, look around. You people are from all over the world, right? And you've come here, you thought Silicon Valley, free. Okay, sort of, you're in California, not that free. But freer than maybe your country was or whatever, and you've moved here. Well, you can move somewhere else. You can move to other countries that are freer and allow you to do what you feel you need to do to drive progress and move things forward. So I'm playing around with a couple of things. How many of you are Bitcoin or any kind of ICO designer, deep down designers? Okay, and coders? Okay. If any of you are looking for something to do, I've got kind of a cool idea. I'll tell you what it is. It's I think there needs to be I think an ICO is a great vehicle to test something, to test this universal basic income idea. So it's this sort of cool idea, and I'm playing around with how best to do it, but you have to create an ICO that can continue to issue coins. Okay, you guys got that? And then there are a few other things. Any of you data people? Okay, a big part of this is going to be data too. So anyway, I'm Tim at draper.vc. So if you want to kind of get together and talk about this and figure out if we can start a business. Okay, that's pretty much what I came here to say. So anything else I'm willing to talk about? Oh, I didn't talk about 3 Californias. I didn't talk about Draper University. Draper University is awesome. Any of you who really want to kind of jumpstart your business, kind of take that first leap, Draper University has been very effective. You know, here at Stanford, I hate picking on Stanford because I went, but here at Stanford, they really are excited when 83% of their graduates get a job, right? Okay, Draper University, they keep them for 4 years. Draper University keeps them for 5 weeks in the summer or 4 months in the fall, and on average, our graduates create 3 jobs. So it's a different way of thinking, and so we will kind of wake you up into this new world and create heroes of you. I'll give you a little window of what kinds of things we have you do. Okay, this is something Stanford would never approve of because it's, you know, there are a lot of lawyers here and there's a big board and lots of professors that would have to agree. But here's what I say. Okay, you got 24 hours. Get up to San Francisco, get a job offer on paper from somebody you've never met, and come back. Go. Come on, go. What are you guys doing here? 24 hours, there's not much time. Very confident group. They don't want to leave. They're thinking, okay, I'll hang out here. Eventually go get my job. But it's really just to show people, hey, you can always go back and get a job. Of course, some of the jobs were like sweeping the gay bar from 3 to 7 in the morning. But they were jobs, you know. And always, oh, by the way, I'm going to give you, since some of you are young, I'm going to give you some interesting advice. 2 pieces of advice that will make you happy people in your life. Okay? One is, marry well. Okay? Number 2 is work. Whatever it is, doesn't matter what you do. Work. Because having that purpose becomes more and more important to you as you get older and older. Work. Okay, that's it. You got a question?
Yeah, I appreciated your comments.
Oh wait, I didn't talk about 3 Californias. Is that what your question's about? Okay. Okay, this is California, as it is. I know it used to be 6. I had to compromise. Okay, this is the new 3 Californias. So this one gets San Francisco, this one gets LA, and this one gets San Diego. And they're all equal in population and pretty close, although Northern California makes the most money. It's pretty close in value. Well, here's what I'm looking at. California provides the worst service at the highest cost. Okay, we have the highest taxes, highest income tax, almost the highest sales tax, and we provide the worst service. Our education is 47th, 48th out of 50. As a place to do business, we are the least friendly to business. We are 50th out of 50. Our infrastructure spending has gone from 28% down to 3%. So all that money, who knows where it went, probably into pensions for retired former employees of some government entity or something. And so what used to be 28%, where we had good water and good streets and good everything, now we've got, water that's a dam that's going to overflow on Oroville, and our drinking water is not that good anymore. The whole system is just whacked. And our K-12 education, I mean, if you're going to destroy a society, what do? You make sure that K-12 education is really bad. And that's what they've done. So anyway, you break it into 3, all those deals that were all back deals, whatever they've got in California that are ruining our state, they all get renegotiated. Suddenly you've got a clean slate, you can renegotiate, and it's not that hard. People say, oh, it'll be complicated, what are you going to do with the water or whatever? You're going to get water, you're going to get fresh water, and it won't fall on your house. Anyway, anybody who wants to speak out for 3 Californias, go for it, because when I speak out, they go, oh, billionaire wasting his money, whatever. So I need people like you coming out and going, no, hey, we're billionaires and we're not wasting our money. He wasted his money, but we're for it. That would be a good thing. Okay, now you got a question.
Bravo, I agree with you. And
hey, we got a spokesperson.
You mentioned about entrepreneurs.
So speak out.
Yes.
Tell people.
3
Tell
or
the
6,
press.
but 3 is fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's where you go. You go to cal3.com. By the way, the site needs work. Anybody really good at that? Help me.
You mentioned about entrepreneurs being aggressive, and as a founder of the smart toothbrush Cloud Connected that is disrupting Philips and Oral-B, my question is, if I give you a sample and you like it, can I pitch to you in your office?
Okay, well then, if they all ask that same question, this gets to be a very time-expensive meeting we've had here. Here's what you got to do. I gave out my email address, tim@draper.vc. Send me the plan. Toothbrushes are cool because high margin,
World's smartest
repeated.
toothbrush.
It's a smart one. Is it the one you go
You
on?
know exactly how you brush. Kids can play games while they brush. It goes to the cloud, sensors.
Tells you when, hey, you didn't brush on
If you
Tuesday.
missed it, you get a notification.
Okay, interesting. Toothbrush, that's one of those industries that does need disrupting. Yeah.
So the last time you were kind of like this excited about the product, it was Theranos. And I wanted to know like what you were doing differently to evaluate companies because clearly that wasn't a great investment.
Now it wasn't. It actually was a great investment. Here's the thing. She did something wrong in my mind, which is not that she lied or anything. That was all bull. What she did wrong was she didn't come back fighting. When the press attacks you, you come back with a gun. And if they come back with a bigger gun, you come back with a bazooka. You just keep coming because otherwise people don't get to hear your story. She kept saying, it'll all come out in the data. It'll all come out in the data. And nobody heard that. Everybody just heard, oh, she did something wrong and fraudulent and all that. I mean, read my book and you get to see at least a window on what happened there. It was a travesty because we all would have been much better off dropping 2 drops of blood for 50 blood tests than we are now, with the vampires. And we'd have all that data over time. And whether it was 3% off or 10% off, who cares? Because you do the same thing over time and you get a really good line of, uh-oh, my vitamin D level's going down and my blood glucose level is going up, what do I have to do? No doctor can give that to you. You can't get that from the blood testing companies today. But they were very clever. And they got this one reporter to just keep pounding and pounding and pounding. He wrote 43 articles. And if you read them, it's all damning with innuendo. There is no smoking gun. And it's unbelievable that this has happened to one of our greatest entrepreneurs. She is one of our greatest entrepreneurs. She came to me when she was 19, and she said, I'm going to change healthcare as we know it. And she did. I mean, eventually that technology wins all the wars. Eventually that technology is going to be out, and it's going to be used, and everybody's going to love it, and those guys are going to go the way of the windmill and the buggy whip. But for now, they were able to crush her. And they did it that way. You get Wall Street Journal to write enough articles that people start going, hey, maybe that's true, to people saying, that's true, and then it gets to be a big uprising, and then of course the government has to come in. I got to regulate, where do I have to regulate? And then the lawyers come in and they go, hey, opportunity knocks. I can sue people here. There are all sorts. There must be some upset investors. Maybe a customer. Maybe we can do a class action. This is really interesting. So yes, I am very pleased that I made that investment. I'm sorry it didn't work out, but boy, that was a winner from the word go, and it could have made all of our lives so much easier. You should hear all the mothers that were doing it down in Arizona. They were going, oh my God, so much easier. My kid just sits there and they poke her finger and it's 2 drops of blood and gets a lollipop and goes home, as opposed to like, oh God, I can't find that vein. Where's your vein? It's a whole different world. So I'll tell you, every once in a while, and I think Napster was a victim of that too. Napster got totally attacked, driven out of business. But Uber got attacked over and over and over, but the customers came back and said, whoa, don't attack Uber. Taxis are okay, but really, Uber, this is what we want. Tesla got attacked. They came raising back. Skype got attacked. They came rising back. if you can get over, that's what I was talking about at the very beginning, if you can get over that first hump of the tax, you are golden. So if you hit a market cap of 100 million, nobody bothers you. You hit a market cap of $1 billion, people start to notice. You hit 10 billion market cap, you get attacked. If you can get through that, you'll get to 100 billion.
So in order, do you think that Theranos has the technology that they promised?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, but here's the deal. When you're a startup, here's the other thing that the news people don't understand. You're starting a company. You're getting it going. You just launch. Always use the word beta. Because you're going to have to keep improving. You're going to have to watch over your customer. How did that go? Is it okay? Can I improve it? What can I do? You're going to have to go through a lot of those iterations. And sure, some of it wasn't working at that point. But it did work. I mean, it got FDA approval for herpes and for something else. So it was getting there. It's just a matter of getting there over time. And you've got to lay it out as clearly as possible. Skype was Skype beta 0.91 forever. It was brilliant. Keep it beta. You don't have to do all that customer support. You don't have to. It's awesome. So be a beta so that they don't do that to you. Anyway, so a few just little changes in her strategy and she would have been huge right now. And it's too bad. My God, she was like the cover of Forbes. Don't you love this? You're kind of going, oh, she's horrible, and she was a fraud and all that stuff. But 2 years ago, it's like, wow, this woman on the cover of Forbes magazine, she's such a hero, and blah, 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 blah. And how our moods changed all of a sudden. And now, what do you think about this? They're attacking Zuckerberg. I think, there's this thing about, the tall tree. Government likes to chop off the tall tree. Zuckerberg got too tall, and so they just said, hey, let's go after him. I would be very circumspect about supporting that kind of activity because that kind of a society is one that we don't really want to live in. We want to live in one that says, Zuckerberg is a friggin' hero. That guy has done so much for so many. Facebook and Instagram and all those things that he's done. It's awesome. And it's worth hundreds of billions of dollars and thousands of jobs. And we're all better off because of it. And now we got these 70-year-old guys going, okay, so now what is data? And if my data is different from your data, whose data are you looking at? So I look at those and I think now they're going to try to go after Bezos. I mean, Bezos, think of what he's done. Oh my God. It's like, I would like zucchini right now. Boom! Oh my God, thank you, Bezos! You are so awesome! I love you! But now the government's kind of going, oh, he's more powerful than I am. I'm going to go after him. I think something happens when you hit like 89 years old and you become a senator. Yeah.
So is that going to happen with crypto in our government? Like, won't there be like this epic?
Okay, yeah, you're seeing it happen with the SEC and the CFPC or whatever. They got a bunch of letters. You're seeing that happen where they're going, hey, it must be a security because I'm the SEC. No, it must be a commodity because I'm the CFPC. No, it's got to be like a drug because I'm an FDA. It's like the cancer doctor who kind of goes, he's only a knee cancer doctor, and he looks at every knee and he goes, that one's got to have. And then he's kind of anything else, oh, you got a sore throat? No, you've got knee cancer. So what's happening? Here's what's happening. Here's the cool thing. that we wouldn't have had even 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had this. Governments are competing. So all of a sudden, our government's going, well, we don't want to lose all that technology, but we want to regulate. But we don't want to lose all that technology. But and so they've got this push-pull thing going on. And you see all of a sudden Japan going, hey, crypto's a national currency. So if we heavily regulate it, here, everybody just moves to Japan. And by the way, it's cool there. And karaoke is like heaven. So much fun, yeah.
Before you kind of alluded to hyperinflation, and I wonder, as someone who's in the human rights field, at the Human Rights Foundation, the idea of censorship-resistant money and that you actually own, could it actually challenge not just hyperinflation, but maybe even dictatorship itself?
Oh yeah. Wait, what are you saying?
I work with a lot of activists from Venezuela, Zimbabwe.
Oh yeah.
You know, who aren't just dealing with hyperinflation, but also political repression.
Sure. If the dictatorship is not an amiable dictatorship,
Right.
you know, there are good dictators. Like Deng Xiaoping, he was awesome. He was a great dictator.
As soon as it's a bad thing.
But if it's a bad dictator, yeah, they're getting thrown out all the time. Because you've got social media, you've got Twitter and Facebook, and people are going, hey, this guy's bad. This is really bad news. And then in China, of course, they go, no Facebook, no Twitter, no whatever. We're going to keep that down. We don't want anybody talking bad about us. But still, then they've got Telegram, and they got waves. And they're spreading, and there are more and more of them, and they keep popping up. And so bad governments, bad dictators are getting overthrown. And so they're not only getting overthrown, but people are leaving them.
Right, but what is Bitcoin specifically? How could it play a role in that?
Oh, because you can leave your government. If you're in Nigeria and you don't like the government, you can go, well, okay, I'm turning all my Naira into Bitcoin, and then I'm leaving. And so I can now go over here and I can just pull down my Bitcoin and turn it into Tanzania and whatever. And I can go to another country, and I can just move across borders much easier than ever before. And so that's where it's awesome for human rights. And the competitive dynamic is also very awesome for human rights. So this is going to be great. It's going to be great. Now, you're seeing, the things I start worrying about is like the G20, they all get together and they go, okay, what are we going to do about this Bitcoin stuff? You know, then suddenly they're blocking it for 20 different countries all at once. But then what will happen is one of them will go, well, I'm going to break rank. Because then everybody will come to me and all the money will come to me. And so then people go, oh, well then I got to break rank too, or else we'll lose all our people and all our money. So I do believe that this is really good. And the blockchain, when the blockchain technology, when you guys go out and you invent all these new ways of using the blockchain for governance, it's going to completely, humans are going to be like so incredibly free. It's going to be awesome. Way back.
Dave, as an Argentinian, I can say that your example is exactly what happened here. So I got two questions. One is, what do you think about cryptocurrencies for saving value? And the second one is, we are working on energy and transportation. And what do you think, how can blockchain and these technologies impact in this new kind of plug and play, green, move yourself to another country, just plug in for new green and use new services? What would you think about that?
Well, I think you can use a token to transfer energy. There's one that's doing transferring energy from, that's just for clean tech. There's already one out there that's starting this cycle. I think you answered your own question because it is, it's incredibly easy to do that. And energy can move across borders and you can go grid to grid. The first part of that question, what was that first part?
Using tokens and cryptocurrencies for saving value.
For storing value. Well, that's been the first use. But I get the feeling that, and it's been a big use because people are going, yeah, generally it goes up, it goes down, and then it goes way up, and then it goes down, it goes way up, and it goes down, and they're sort of saying, well, you know, I'm a hodler, You know, I'm not gonna sell that, or I'm not gonna trade my Bitcoin for anything, because I keep hearing all these things. 2 people paid their tuition to Draper University in Bitcoin. They paid for my whole first year. It was awesome. So I thank them regularly. But yeah, for a store of value, it's the first use. Eventually, you're going to tie it to a credit card, and you're going to be able to pay in Bitcoin, or you just go into Starbucks and go here. But you know, the credit card companies are all tied to the banks, and the banks are JP Morgan's second move after all of his employees said, hey, we're gonna have some of this stuff. So, you know, don't fire us, but I've got a Bitcoin wallet, I want to hedge against this bank. And then he said, okay, no credit card that's issued here can be used to buy Bitcoin. So they're not going to issue any credit to anybody who's going to go buy Bitcoin. And they're justifying it by saying, you know, oh, that you shouldn't be able to borrow money to take a risk with it. But what they're really saying is, we are scared to death. This is so much better than what we provide for huge spreads. You know, how long do you get away with like offering interest of 0.75% and then loaning it out at 19.5%? Yeah, how long do you get away with that? Well, they're learning that it's not forever. Yeah.
Chris, where do you think the VC industry is going to go, given that traditionally good VCs have provided both funding as well as advisory services and branding, credibility, and network, but there's been the challenge of 5 to 7 year exit, and whereas in the ICO market, investors are basically liquid within 6 months to a year, there is less risk, and there's a much broader pool of investors. So how does that impact your industry?
Yeah, okay, well, a couple of ways. One is, yeah, there's a huge piece of competition that's this ICO, where any entrepreneur can go and just raise an ICO, and if they can create a coin, I'll get into that for in a second. No, I'll say it now. There's a difference between did I say this? For-profit, non-profit, and ICO? Okay, so you understand that. An ICO is for a societal Kickstarter for a societal transformation. So if you can do that, if you can create a currency that has a trading to it, then there's real value there, and you don't need to go to a VC. Now you might, and a lot of people have come to me now as like a VC, like, here, can you be an advisor to us? We don't actually need your money. And I'm kind of thinking, well, what did I raise all this money for? You don't need it. But there are going to be a lot of interesting things that happen to our industry. One is, you know, you said this liquidity thing. We hate the lack of liquidity. We love the idea of tokenizing that. Now, of course, it has to go through the SEC because it's a security and whatever else, but we love it. So that part's going to be great. We're going to have much better liquidity. Liquidity equals wealth. Velocity of money equals wealth. So those things are really good for society. So all of these cryptocurrencies are creating higher velocity of money, and that is creating more wealth. You know, this group, the unbanked, they're unbanked because if I'm a banker and somebody comes to me and says, here, I want to set up a bank account, here's my $22.58, I'm gonna say, go away, because it's going to cost me $200 a year to regulate you, just to fill out all the forms for you. So I'm not going to take that money. I don't want you. So then they're automatically unbanked, and so the poverty sinks even lower because they're not a part of this economy. Well, suddenly there's Bitcoin. They're a part of the economy. They don't need a bank. They can just spread the money, move it, whatever. And Bitcoin's getting, it was tough for a while because they can only do one transaction every 7 seconds or something. Now, or 7 transactions a second. Now new technologies come in, this Lightning Network, and so it's super fast. And they'll be able to issue credit cards and do all the things that they need to do. Yes?
You're also on State Board of Education. Can you talk more about education and blockchain, how it's going to change? But besides, there are many startups now working on authenticating certificates, diplomas. Besides that, can you talk more about education?
Yeah, and it kind of gets me to one of the biggest, hottest buttons, and if you can solve it, that would be awesome. Identity. Identity is super important. If you can solve identity, that's a super important thing, because then all the crypto crime will just disappear. Even the fiat crime may even disappear. But people are authenticating. You get a Stanford degree, boom. They will put that on you, and it will be a part of you, and you can put it up on your Facebook profile and on LinkedIn, and that'll be a part of your identity. And it won't be just that. It won't be like Stanford degree, but it might be, I passed a Udemy test on Python, and I did a course on Adobe Photoshop, and I went to Draper University's summer program, became a hero. I did something else at Singularity University, and I did something else. And that's my education, and that's what it looks like. So I actually think that education's ready for a real revamp. I didn't really go into this, but when I was starting Draper University, I went to my lawyer and I said, well, what do I need to do? And he starts going through this incredibly brutal list. You need 3 full-time PhDs that are tenured. You need something else. It's all got to be a grading system that we're all familiar with. It's got to be this, that, and the other thing. And it's got to be safe, keep the children safe, all that stuff. And then I said, well, wait a second, you keep saying accredited. What if I don't want to be accredited? And then he said, oh, you don't have to do any of this stuff. And so what I realized was the accreditation process is the process that is keeping our education system down. It is forcing us to fit into a box. And so I started to think, okay, well, for starters, I'm going to go through that list, and I'm going to do the opposite of what each of those things were. So 3 full-time tenured PhD professors, I said, no one can come speak at Draper University for more than an hour. Nobody stays. I take a little more than an hour. I started it. Come on, give me a break. And then I say everything's individualistic. It's like you get an A because you didn't make any mistakes. Okay, so they're creating a whole population of people who are afraid to make mistakes. But like Velcro and America and electricity and Reese's peanut butter cups and whatever else, they were all created by mistake. They were all mistakes. So all these amazing things, penicillin, they were all mistakes. So why are we trying to tell everybody not to make any mistakes? It just makes no sense. So what we do is and it's all individualistic, and so what we do is we make it a team-based approach, teams of 5. And those teams all have to compete, and the way they get points is if they do a really, really good job, we just go, good job. If they do something really extraordinary and it wins, we say, here are a bunch of points. And then if they do something really extraordinary and it loses and it's a huge failure, it's got to be a huge failure, they get a whole bunch of points. And so we're pushing all the things that the schools weren't pushing. And we're sort of changing the whole nature of the thing. And then it's supposed to be safe, so I thought, okay, we're going to have survival week. You guys are going to go get, destroyed by Navy SEALs and Special Forces and Army Rangers for a week. Good luck. And so, make them sign their life away because we don't want a bunch of lawyers involved. And then we kind of, set them loose, about 3 or 4 different ways, because we just want them to, we're totally politically incorrect. We tell them all the things that we're not allowed to say. It's just like, whatever. And we just tell them all those things because we want them to be aware, just be aware there's a world out there. If you isolate people and keep them safe, they're bubble boy, They don't even know what's going on. How are they ever going to make a living? And then you put them $200,000 in debt. Anyway, so there's my feel on education.
I want to ask, at the beginning you were talking about being pro-terrestrial government, so the police, the firefighters and so on. And
I
then,
don't have a solution for that yet.
That was going to be my question. How
I
do you
know
merge
it's
the two?
starting to come, and I know there are always private alternatives, there are always private companies that do security, and there are the volunteer fire departments, you could pay them with Bitcoin. There are probably some really interesting things you can do.
So is this a libertarian argument? Like, is this how you see the future?
I just know that I didn't really like any of the political parties anymore. I started out a Republican, then I became a Democrat, and then I went, whoa. And so now I'm a decline to state. I'm this sort of thing that just says, I don't really like all these political parties. I think we're all people. And we're all just trying to figure out how to make it in the world and, raise our families and make good things happen and maybe reach outside of that and help my community, help society, whatever. But I don't think, if somebody says, no, you're a Democrat, that means something to people. And then they go, oh, well, then that's a problem because I'm a Republican. Say somebody's a Republican, they say, oh, no, that's something. I kind of like the idea of let's just I kind of like this, what do they call it, a liquid democracy, where you can add, I believe the same thing you do on legalizing marijuana. So I'm going to give you my marijuana votes. And you and I, we both agree that the taxes should be lower. So I'm going to give you all my tax lower votes. And you and I believe that that we should have gay marriage. You and me, gay marriage. No. No, I'm good too, right? But, 4 kids, 4 grandkids, I'm still kind of straight. But I believe in that gay marriage thing because I think, if you're gay, that's great. Go do gay marriage. And so I would say, which is it? Who likes that? Okay, you get my tokens to go vote whenever we come up to something like that. So then it becomes sort of this liquid democracy. So that's sort of way out, 25 years out kind of thing. But I think whenever anybody tries to sort of label you, resist it. You guys want to know the secret to success. It's other than marry well and work. Here's what it is. Do one crazy thing. And then everybody thinks, oh, can you believe she did? How awful. And then do another crazy thing. And then, oh, God, how can you believe what she did? It's enough. Then do a third crazy thing, and it's like, oh, that's just her. So you get 3 crazy things down, you are clear. All of a sudden you have this free world in front of you. You are free. It's awesome. Because then that gets a label and they go, oh no, it's because he. And then what's the difference between the libertarian and the one who doesn't want any government at all? What's that?
Anarchist.
Anarchist. Yeah. And then what about the one, you know what I am? I'm a believer in progress, moving the world forward. And I'm a believer that if you can get governments to compete with each other, it doesn't matter what we all kind of vote for or anything. because they're going to have to compete with each other for us, just like the chair salesman and the camera salesman and the Bitcoin wallet salesman. They all have to compete for us, and then we're all better off. But right now they've got these monopolies, and that's what I'm trying to break here. Just blow out the monopolies. If you had any sense on, how much control, say, the state employee unions and teacher unions have over that state, you would just be going, oh my God, it doesn't matter what I do. So make it 3 states. Yeah.
So you said in 5 years now, crypto is going to be a dominant payment system. Everyone's going to be using it for Starbucks, and then also in 5 years, it's going to be worth 250,000 plus. How do you see both of those two things working together? Like, who wants to spend it if it's a cash cow?
Well, I think once it gets to be 250,000, people kind of go, well, it's in a pretty good place. And
think that would happen very
and then people are going to start seeing that it's maybe a quarter of the way to where it'll be like a quarter. I got to do the math again, but let's say it's a quarter of the way to saturation. Then I don't feel so bad about spending it. My goal with my Bitcoin, by the way, people say, you're going to sell your Bitcoin? And I go, into what? It's like, take your gold and turn it into shells. It's like, go back in time. Let's go sell my car and buy a horse. Actually, that might be a pretty good trade. I don't know. Anyway, that's the way I'm looking at it. At that point, I think you hit 250,000 per Bitcoin. You've got a pretty stable marketplace. In fact, at that point, any smart government is not going to tax it as an asset. It will keep it as a currency because they will want free flow of money through the country. Free flow of money actually creates a lot of wealth and a lot of taxes. When they try to tax every little thing, people try to work. They think tax when they're doing their work. Why do you do that? Just let it rip, and then whatever you have at the end of the year, that's whatever you made. That's what you do.
You want to do one more question?
One more question. It's got to be a girl. There you go.
So you have a prediction for Bitcoin to reach 250,000, and I don't know the math percent of that would be. Do you think ICOs will surpass that?
Yeah, I think what my calculation said to me, well, if it was a calculation, I could have just sort of felt the spirits. But let's say I did a calculation. I was guessing Bitcoin was something like 20% market share. And there would be others that would rise up and have a big share too. But here's the thing, when you've got a network effect like this, you've heard of Metcalfe's law. Metcalfe's law says that the value of a network is the square of the number of nodes in the network. And Bitcoin has 2 times the number of nodes of any other currency. And so that means it should be like 4 times as valuable as any other currency. And as those nodes grow, they have such a lead that there will be, of course, there are going to be specialty coins that just come out of nowhere and become, this great success, and we'll all go, oh, hey, we'll move over to that. Bitcoin will have this like solid thing going. At least that's the way I look at it. It will have this network that just keeps growing. And if you're a retailer, you're going to say, you want to start taking crypto? What are you going to say? I'm going to take Credo? No, you're going to say I'm going to take Bitcoin, and then I might take Ethereum, and then I might take Bitcoin Cash. Who knows what else? Monero, or Tezos maybe at the time. But I think you got to think, well, what's going to really happen? There will be huge network effects to the Bitcoin ecosystem as people start thinking like, well, what are we going to take? there's always that first thing they're going to take, and then suddenly Bitcoin's in all the taken by all the retailers. It's going to be tough for another one to come rising up. But there will be. There will be. God, that's what's so cool about our world. Technology just changes, and all of a sudden we're teleporting, or we're on a ship, spaceship to Alpha Centauri, and we didn't even think that was possible. So many things have happened. I used to watch Star Trek 25, 30 years ago, and it was like, oh yeah, really? You're going to have a communicator, like, hey, bridge to Spock. Yeah, no way that was ever going to happen. And that was only short-haul communicator. Now we can communicate anywhere around the world. It's amazing with this thing. So cool. A lot of great things are happening out there. Go do something. Go be cool. Go do something. And step forward. And don't say be realistic to anybody, ever. Okay. I'm gonna go home, have dinner with my wife. Yeah, not you. So just Tim at draper.vc to get me, and I do read all my emails. So, but don't just say, hey, I was thinking about things and I saw a butterfly fly through the. If you got a business plan, boom. Bring it to me. But if you don't have a business plan, wait until you have one. And then Tim at draper.vc.